with Dennis Koslowski, who is being inducted this week as a distinguished member of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame and Museum. Dennis, tell us a little bit about your thought when you got the phone call that the Hall of Fame said that you were going to be inducted this year and join with the distinguished members.
Well, it was really very thrilling. I have to admit I was waiting for it for a few years, and I was just very excited. It just means everything. I think when I think that I'll be enshrined forever, and with like the likes of Dan Gable and all the other wrestling greats, it's just a great feeling.
Now, how did you get involved in wrestling as a youth? You grew up in South Dakota.
Well, I lived in an area that was big in wrestling. The high school that initially I had gone to junior high there was a regular state competitor, state championship type team, and the head coach also coached he was a physical education teacher and a teacher at the junior high. So of course he coached wrestling for that portion of the curriculum, and I think he recognized that my twin brother and I were pretty good athletes and had pretty good strength because we were working on the farm all the time. So he talked to my older cousin who we were living with at the time and asked if there was a way that myself or my twin brother could wrestle, and that was how it got started.
Now, high school wrestling, you and your brother both did pretty well, and considered keeping wrestling when you went to college. Talk a little bit about your decision to wrestle in college and continue with the sport.
I had an older brother that wrestled at Huron College, which was a short distance from Dolan, South Dakota, where I went to high school, and also I wanted to play football. And my brother and I, we did well, but we weren't Division I level recruits or even Division II. There weren't a lot of schools interested in us, but a couple were, and one of them was Minnesota Morris. And when we talked to the head coach there, we really liked him. Doug Dufty has just been one of the greatest influences in my life, and he also said that, well, we could play football there also, and it was just a great decision, and that was the reason I went to Minnesota Morris.
How did you get hooked up with the Greco-Roman wrestling and the Minnesota Wrestling Club and all those great legends in Greco that helped mentor you?
Well, Brad Rangens, who was on the 76 and 80 Olympic teams and world place winner, he grew up near Morris, Minnesota, and he knew the head wrestling coach, Doug Dufty, and during Christmas time he would come up to Morris to work out because he was home to visit his parent, and so we started working out with him. He started talking about what Greco was about. It was for someone that had any aspirations at all. It sounded pretty exciting to wrestle at the international level, and so that was kind of a window to it. And then, of course, he watched my brother and I's career and talked to Dan Chandler, who was still wrestling, but also kind of the club coach of the Minnesota club, and eventually when I was done with college he gave me a call and asked if I was interested in coming down and working with the Minnesota Wrestling Club. And
had a number of years where you banged heads with Greg Gibson, who was inducted, I believe, 2 years ago here, another great wrestler in Greco-Roman. What was it like for you to compete against somebody that was also a very high international level wrestler in your weight class?
Well, that's one of the things that I will try to talk a little bit about tonight, very briefly. But just I have to thank people like Greg Gibson and Jeff Blatnick and the national level, because those were guys I had to beat to make the teams, and I lost the first 9 times I wrestled Gibson. I lost to him, so But I was a solid number 2 and getting closer all the time, and measured that positively, and eventually I beat him for the first time in '83, and then he came back and beat me for the '84 team, and then I beat him the last 2 times we competed. But you know, his success on the international level told me that if I could beat him, that I could also have success at the international level.
Your twin brother came back to Greco and competed heavyweight for a quadrennium leading up to the '88 Olympics. And what was it like to have Dwayne as your training partner and just cohort along the road that takes you all around the world and ultimately to the Olympic Games?
Well, it was everything. We, all the way pretty much through high school and college, we kind of avoided wrestling each other. I don't think either of our egos could take it. It was way too difficult to compete against kind of your mirror image. And but as we advanced in our level of competition, and I guess the competition as far as training partners faded away, eventually we looked across the room and the only other person to work out with was him, and vice versa. So, and I think that, of course, really helped us to finally put our egos aside, start to train against one another, and ultimately improve and do as well as we did. And just like we did our whole career, and a lot of brothers do this, is we kind of would leapfrog over one another, where one would face a match the other maybe didn't think he could win, and see him win that match and think, well, gosh, if he can beat that guy, then I can beat this guy, and so it was more of that, and but just to be together and experience it and seeing each other's successes is, you know, it's hard to put into words. It's one of the greatest things that have ever happened in the sport for us.
Won 2 Olympic medals. I'd like to just ask you about each of the Olympics, what your memories are now looking back, starting with the first, the bronze medal in Seoul.
Well, they were kind of, you know, they're both great medals, but yet they're both, you know, unique in their own way. The bronze medal was obviously great because it was the first medal won in a non-boycotted Olympics. And it was quite a struggle. It was before they started doing the qualifying for the Olympic Games, and typically in a World Championship or Olympic Games, you're looking at 5 matches. And the way that thing shook out, because there were so many competitors and a lot of the guys at my weight were real equal, instead of having like 2 matches your first day, 2 your second, and 1 your last, I had 4 matches over, or 2 a day for 2 days, and then was looking at 3 matches on the last day, and losing more than 1, there was no medal, and that was hard, and it definitely affected my performance. It was hard to sleep on that, to prepare. It was hard to get that out of your head and go 1 match at a time, and I ended up losing to Andre Ronsky, the Pole, in the first match, 1-0, and the way I wrestled my next 2, if I would have wrestled that way against Ronsky, I would have been the gold medalist. There was something kind of changed when I lost to him, and I finally allowed myself to wrestle to my ability, and came back and won the bronze. And it was a great feeling, and you had to keep it in perspective. Of course, it would have been great to win the gold, but you know, what it meant to me, and confidence and all that was important. And I really thought I was done wrestling at the time, and then of course I then ultimately decided to come back and make a run at '92, and in part it was when I was national coach in '89 and coaching all the other guys. I was responsible for 60-some wrestlers, and coaching them, trying to tell them what to do and how to do it, how to train. And it was good to look at it from that perspective, not as much as a competitor, but as a coach. And I started to realize that I still had the abilities and the knowledge and the hunger to maybe make another run at it. And in '92, I was just simply better in a sense of, from a mental approach to it, just because I was able to remember everything that happened in '88, both the positive and the negative, and I applied the positive and used it in my favor. And I made sure that the negatives didn't show up, and I was just as confident as I could be. It was kind of a been there, done that feeling, and almost surprised myself.
Yeah.
It would have been great to win the gold, but just to be right there, it just it kind of reflected on my whole career. Is just that I think I look at my career and I basically was chasing knowledge. I was trying to. I was lucky enough to have the right people around me, and told me what I needed to know, and I had the desire to learn. And by the time my last 3, 4 World and Olympic champions, I was always in there for the medal, and I think it showed that I knew what it took, and that I had the right control of my psyche to just be in the running, and it was a great culmination of a really great career.
Any thoughts about being part of the group of athletes that have brought the U.S. Greco program around? We won a world team title a couple years ago for the United States, and certainly you, your brother, and the athletes that you competed with really helped elevate the program to the point where now we're very, very competitive internationally every year.
Well, it's exciting in the same sense. It was such a shock when I first became involved to realize that we weren't this overwhelming power, that we just weren't that good in Greco. And I think a lot of credit has to go to Pavel Katzen and what he did for the program, and he really taught us what we needed to know, and he understood the American way, and that we needed to combine the right amount of coaching and along with the right amount of capitalism, if you will,
yeah.
and the ideal of being better or innovative and learning and competing above our abilities in some cases, and Pavel brought that, I thought, and yeah, it was great to be one of the guys that broke through and started to show that we could compete at that level, and I'm sure it inspired a lot of people down the road that my success shows that it could be done, and it's just great to be part of that.
Well, thanks for your time. Congratulations, and enjoy the rest of this weekend.
All right, thank you.
Take care.